Hello everyone, welcome back to another tutorial of Techify Zone. We are here with the tutorial 9 of exception handling. So exception handling is a very important topic, I must say, to capture all your unchecked, checked exceptions or the errors as well. So we'll talk more about the exception handling, what exactly is exception handling, then we'll move slowly towards the types of exception handling, and then we'll demonstrate the different like concepts of try, catch, throws with the practical examples so that you understand it very properly and note it down. This is very important topic, and I would suggest have a paper pen with you so that you can understand it and you can think like why exceptional handling is so important. Okay, so let's quickly jump to the introduction first. Okay, let me showcase you a few slides first, and we will be talking more about theoretically first, and then we'll be doing the practical. Okay. So, exception handling, what exactly is exception? Exception is a normal condition that arises in the code sequence at runtime, or it can be a compile time exception as well. So, I will talk more about what is a compile time handled exception, what are the runtime. So, don't worry. Okay. In the other words, I will say exception is a runtime error, and also like Java exception is an object that describes an exceptional condition that has occurred in the pieces of code. Okay. So I will say like what is an exception? Okay. In a very simple terms, if I leave this bookish language aside, in a very simple terms, suppose you are building a calculator. Okay. Even if you have your mobiles right now, I would say take your mobile, open your calculator. Okay. And do one thing. Do any division with /0. Okay. So like 2000 divided by 0. If you are doing it on the Java programming or any other your calculator, it will give you a kind of an exception that you are doing wrong, that anything can't be divided by 0. So I have a mobile with me. Let me do the similar thing for you guys, like 2000 divided by 0. It's a cannot divided by 0. So whosoever programmer has designed this particular APK file, they have done the exception handling very well, because this is a arithmetic exception which can occur anytime. Even by mistake, I was supposed to type 10, but I missed to hit on 1, and I just hit 0 and hit the equal to button. So technically it will give me arithmetic exception that you can't divide anything by 0. It's incorrect. So what we need to do is we need to handle these kind of scenarios in our coding. So we can handle it because we are the coders, but the user who is actually experiencing or is actually doing the testing or using your application, he might not be aware of these exceptions. Maybe he or she unattendedly, like they actually hit the 0 by default, by mistake, and then the exception came and then they report a bug to you. But that doesn't sound good, because we have to handle these kind of conditions during the coding part. Okay. So these are the exceptions that we need to take care. A compiler, or even sometimes we leave these kind of scenarios, a boundary value analysis. That's why we say the boundary value analysis are very important. We need to test our code very well so that we are not passing or deploying bug, any buggy code or defective code in the productions. Okay. So exception handling is very important. So now we talk about what kind of exceptions, like in on the screen you can see it's a simple division, right? Like the two input we are getting from the user, which is x and y, and then again the same scenario, z is equal to x divided by y. If I am doing like 6 divided by 3, it will give me 2. But what if 6 divided by 0? It will give me an exception, right? So exception can occur anytime. It can occur during the runtime with the different, by passing a wrong data, by passing a wrong file. It can be like your connection was not established. So it can be an IO exception as well, file not found exception as well, arithmetic exception, null pointer exception. So there are n number of exceptions we have in Java. Okay. So I will say, instead of going like this, let me showcase you the hierarchy part first. Okay. So let's start from the top. Throwable. Throwable has two different subclasses, which is exception and error. Exception is further divided into two different sets. One is your checked exception, another one is your unchecked exceptions. So check exception and unchecked exception, many people actually get very confused. What is a checked exception? What is unchecked exception? And how to remember all these? Like this set comes under check, this set comes under unchecked. How we will like consider and how we will remember it? The best part, a small trick I will explain you. The best part is whatever exception your compiler is giving you during the or any suggestion your compiler is giving during compile time of the code, you are just writing your code. You have not yet I will say you have not yet uh, run it. Okay, so before running your code, if you're getting a warning sign in the Eclipse ID on the left side that there's a warning, you need to surround it with a try catch or declare with using a throw keyword. Then that's a checked exception, because your compiler is capable enough to showcase or to guide you that you need to there is an exception over here which will occur in future, so make sure you are handling it. So that's a checked exception, which is SQL exceptions or IO exceptions. Suppose you create an object of file class, right? File f is equal to new file, and you pass the string of that or path of that particular file. Usually you will see, like, if you are using file input stream, file input stream f is equal to new file input stream, and in the bracket you pass down the object of the file class, right? Usually whenever you type this on Java, you will get a warning from compiler that you have missed the exception handling. You need to surround it with the try catch. You surround it by the try catch, so that's a checked exception. But on the other hand, okay, you are doing z is equal to x divided by y in the previous example. Compiler will not give you an exception, because as per compiler there is no exception over there, because it's an unchecked exception. That exception can occur in future with respect to the faulty or flaky data. Okay, so note it down, like checked are those which are even handled by the compiler or compile give you warning, but unchecked are those which can actually come in during the runtime, and those are not handled by compiler itself. That's your thought and that's your perspective, that you need to think out of the box at that time, and you need to handle your code accordingly. You getting my point? So runtime exceptions are those like arithmetic exception, array index out of bound exception, null pointer exception. So let me explain you these three common exceptions first. Arithmetic exception is which whatever the exception is occurring due to the mathematical calculations which are not possible, like anything divided by zero. Okay, so that's a arithmetic exception. Array index out of bound exception means, like, suppose you have declared an array. Okay, and if you are not aware about the array concept yet, go and watch my another tutorials on specifically on array and strings, and then come back to this tutorial so that you can relate yourself with these exceptions. Okay, so array means, like, if you have any array with the size of 5. Okay, so if the size of array is 5, so technically the maximum index value is 4. Okay, so maximum index is always size minus 1. 4. But what if you are trying to access the index value of 5, which is not possible because there is no index as 5? Then it will be giving you array index out of bound exception. Null pointer exception. Suppose you have declared anything, but you are not, suppose you have declared like string s, okay, and but you haven't initiated it or new string or anything like that, but you are using a method called string dot size or length or any other method which is related to that. Then at that point you might can get null pointer exception. You have declared something but you have not initialized it, and then you're further using it actually in the real time example, and that moment you can get null pointer exception. And this is a very common mistakes which most of the developers do. Okay, now talking about the errors. Errors are those like stack overflow error, no such method error, virtual machine error. Suppose you are calling a method which is not even existing over there, no such method error, no such class exception can also come. And virtual machine error, which is related to your hardware or your they are related to your virtual machines which are hosted on the cloud. Okay, stack overflow error, which means can your backend space is completely out full, or it won't be able to compensate with the another data. So these kind of the errors you can get, but we'll be more focusing on exceptions in this lecture. Okay, So let me quickly go ahead with the checked exceptions. I have already explained you what is checked, what is unchecked. So you can checked is a compile time exception, unchecked is a runtime exception. Okay, and these are the different exceptions which I'll say we have, and these are the subclasses of the exception class only. Okay, let me directly jump to these kind of examples. Now, instead of going over there, let me jump to Eclipse now and it's code. Okay, so now you have a theoretical knowledge that what is an exception. Okay, and now we will be explaining the same concept using the practical knowledge. Okay, so let's deep dive into it. The same thing, I would say, like int a comma b comma c over here. A is equal to uh, a is equal to 5, b is equal to 0, and c is equal to a divided by b. Okay, so and let me put it inside a main method, static void main, and make it a public method. Okay, and then string a, and paste the same thing over here, and let me this out this c, though it will not able to reach this line because there is an exception over here. Okay, let me, okay, what's the static, sorry. Okay, static int a, int b, int c, or else let me declare it over here directly if it is giving these kinds of it. Okay, sorry, it's not that, it's like a, and over here let me make it as z. Okay, okay, so now the error which I'm getting is remove the access modifiers. Okay, let me remove this. Okay, chalo, let's quickly execute it. See what we got. Exception in, I got exception in thread main, that is java.lang.arithmetic exception, and for the explanation is divide by 0. And at what line? 12th line. If you click on this, you will get this is the line number which is actually throwing the exception. So technically, now we know where we are getting the exception. Okay, and this is also a method that you need to learn how to read an exception, how to navigate to that particular line where the exception is coming up. Okay, now what if I need to handle this exception? What if I don't want that my actually runtime, during the runtime my program should fail? It should at least educate the user that the same way which we actually seen in that particular phone, right? In your phone calculator, if you are using an iPhone or Android, in both ways the exception handling is very important and they have handled it. Okay, so let me do one thing. I know this is the exceptional area which will be causing the exception, and this is the unchecked exception. Okay, so let me do a try over here and catch with the, or I know this is the arithmetic exception e, and let me print out something over here, or let me cannot the same which we usually get on our phone, cannot divide by 0. Try another time. Okay, so let us do like this, and this C is actually inside the try block, so I won't be doing that. Okay, so now I'll be printing it. What we got? We didn't got the exception because we printed something and we handled the exception this time. So that's why we called it as exception handling, that you are handling an exception. Okay, now suppose by default, even as a developer, I made a mistake. Null pointer exception. Okay. Now what it will say? See, again I got the exception because I try to handle the exception, but by mistake, I actually handled an exception which is not even occurring. The occurrence of exception is arithmetic exception, but I am trying to handle null pointer exception. So that's also a wrong thing to do. That's why you should know, you should have an idea about the exceptions, that which exception you need to take care of. Otherwise, if you don't have any idea, the best thing is don't go with the subclass. Do like this. Do with the parent class. Okay. So exception, and then no matter which kind of exception is occurring in this particular block over here, it will automatically give you the output like this, because you are using the parent object now, parent class object. Okay. So this is the unchecked exception, an example of a arithmetic exception that we usually handle. Okay. So this is how you can handle the exceptions. Okay. Now there are other ways as well. There are like, it doesn't mean that only one exception will come in this particular block. There can be a case where multiple exceptions are coming up, right? Suppose like this, raise this j and saying initialize variable 0, and I will say 0 by 0. I'll hit it again, the same thing, cannot be divided by 0, or I would say 2 and hitting it. It's giving me nothing because there was no exception. But my point was like this. Now, let me give you a one. So my point is, there can be an arithmetic exception, there can be a null pointer exception, there can be any other exception too. Okay. So how to handle these many exceptions if are they are coming up? They are all coming up at a time. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to add the catch blocks. So let me add the arithmetic exception first. Okay. And pass down the same thing. Now let me copy down the complete line. Okay. And over here I will change the in parent exception. Okay. In parent exception. And what if I think that there can be a case where null pointer is also coming up? So I will add a null pointer exception too. Okay. And I will say you forgot to initialize the variable. Okay. Then there can be any other exception, like suppose we have a IO exception or file not found exception. Okay. File already exists exception, file not found exception, like this. Okay. So over here, unreachable code block, file not found, the exception is never thrown. Okay. No worries, because we have, it's a checked exception actually. Okay. So we can have different, the main motive of my saying over here is that you can have multiple catch blocks with a single try block. That's the main concept which I want to teach. It doesn't mean that you are only bounded to a single exception and only single exception will come in your block. There can be a case where multiple exceptions are coming up and they are occurring. Okay. Okay. So in this code only, let us make a slight change. Okay. So let me make a string d, okay, with null. Okay. And after this, I am doing d dot if, let me do an if d dot equals any random value, ABC. Okay. And then I'm doing sys out matches, else sys out not match. Okay. And me scroll it down a little bit. Yeah, over here. not match, and I also have a null pointer exception over here. And let me don't word with this too. Now, if I run it, it will give me you forgot to initialize the variable. It actually came into the null pointer exception. Okay, you're getting it? Like, what happened? So, there was a case that it came under the try block where C is equal to A divided by B, though it's 5 divided by 2, and will return the 2 value as an integer. And then if D, which was not initialized well, because D is equal to null, and as I have not initialized anything under the string, and I'm comparing it, I'm using a method of dot equals, then technically it gave me the null pointer exception, and it got handled under this particular block. Okay, so even if I was having multiple exceptions, I have a fear that there can be multiple exceptions which can occur in the same block. Then I can add multiple catch blocks. Okay. Now what if I have zero? Now I have two exceptions at the same time. Like C, A divided by B. Else D is also a string variable which is not initialized, and D dot equals this particular string, right? So what will happen? Will both of the catch block will work together? No, whatever exception will be caught first, it will be exiting the try block, and it will going to its respective catch block. See, it didn't executed this because the compiler even didn't reach to this code. It actually got the exception over here and directly navigated to arithmetic exception. So this is how your exceptions are being handled in try and catch. Okay, so now there was a topic called finally block, which is also very, very important. Okay, why? Because there can be a case that you are handling your exceptions very well. You are handling your try, you are handling your catch, but there is something that even if exception is not coming, or even if exception is coming, you need to print. Okay, that you need to say goodbye to your user. Okay, then I will say like this, and I will add up anything in the finally block, and it will by default it will print. Okay. Okay, so in this final block, suppose I want to print end of the code. Thanks. Okay. Suppose I want to print this to a user who has used this particular application, and at the end, doesn't matter whether the application has thrown the exception or not. It will print end of the code. Thanks. End of the code. Thanks. Whatever the print statement I have given, or whatever the operation you want to do it in the final. For example, like you want to do the initialization, or you want to like what are the memory was allocated to all your variables under the try block. You want to deallocate all that particular memory. You can do in the final block. Okay, so these kind of operations you can do in final block. So final block can be called anytime. Now there was a condition. Okay, suppose, and it's very common, guys. There is an interview question which I usually ask to most of the candidates, that can we have a try block without a catch block? And everybody, most like people, like 90% of the people usually say that no, because try block must have a catch block. But that's not correct. See this. I commented out everything and run it. I got it. End of the code, thanks, and then last exception. So technically my code worked, right? I was not having any exception handler using a catch block. I was not having any catch up, but I was only having a try. Neither I got any compile time error or nor at the runtime. So question answer is yes, you can have a try block without a catch block, but you need to have a finally block for that. So if I comment the finally block, now it will give me error that catch block is not there. You need to have at least one catch block to remove that error. Okay, but at least even if I have a finally block, that doesn't matter. Then catch block doesn't matter. So that's the power of finally block. Okay, so now you learned three concepts in exception handling: try block, catch block, finally block. There are two more keywords which we need to learn. That is throw and throws. And those are very important as well. Okay. So let me shift back to the slide now. Okay. So now, what is throw? So kind of throw is a keyword that usually we use to rethrow a caught exception, to customize the message to be displayed by the predefined exceptions, or to throw a user-defined exception as well. There can be an exception that you have created on your own. Java was not giving you an exception of that kind, but you have created your own exception. Okay. So like any of the system generated exceptions are automatically thrown by the Java runtime system. That is by default. But if you want to explicitly throw any exception on your own, then you can use this throw keyword. And how we can use a throw keyword? Let me show you one example in Eclipse. Let me show you quickly. Okay, let me do a transition first. Okay, let me create a new class. This is very posh over here. So throw demo. Okay, we create a main method as well. Yeah, so let me create a demo block which I need to put inside a try block. Okay, demo is a method which I have not created yet, so I'll be creating it later on. And catch block which will be handling a null pointer exception, and I will be printing it system.out, which is e dot get message. Okay, and this out through exception and okay. Now I need to create a demo. Okay, it's a private static void demo in which I have described a string a is equal to null, and again a try block. Okay, over here I am doing a dot equals like this, and I'm taking a boolean b is equal to like this and semicolon. Okay, now I need to define a catch block. Okay, so catch basically is having in a null pointer exception e. I will throw e. Okay, so if you can see the code, let me little bit. Yeah, that is better. Yeah, so what's happening is I basically want to customize my message. Okay, I don't want to print that static message what exception was giving, and I want to customize my message and want to rethrow my exception to the main block. Okay, that main method should have the power to hold that particular exception and to print the message. That's my main goal using the throw keyword. Okay, so what we are doing is we are doing like this. Okay, so my main method is basically calling a demo method which is under the try and catch block. Okay, and then what I am doing is I am this is my demo method which is maybe throwing some exception over there, and then I am using try over here, and then again null value initialized string, and I'm going to create a null pointer exception over here, but I'm not going to handle it over here. I'm throwing it further, throwing where to its parent from where it was called. So try will getting a exception which is a null pointer. Then it will go to the catch block. It will print the message. It will print the throw exception handling. Let us try. See, cannot invoke the string because a is null throw exception handling, which means this was the block which was executed. So technically, I have thrown one exception. Okay. So what I did is I have thrown my child method exception to the parent method. Now you're getting the power of throw, and there are plenty of examples on Google which you can actually use it, and during the runtime as well as you can use it. Okay. Whenever you guys are creating any framework in automation testing, please try to use these exception handling from and plan it from the start. during the framework architectural design, plan how you are going to create a framework and how you are going to handle those exceptions. This is very important. I have seen many automation testers, many even experienced automation testers who have capability to create a framework, but they don't plan it well. That's why the framework is created, but it don't function well. The maintenance cost is high. Again, they have to maintain it. Again, they have to rework it. Then they come out with the proper framework. Why you have to invest first a time to framework creation, then revamping it, and then giving the product to the client? That gives a negative image, right? So I must say, plan your framework architecture very well. Then go ahead with the actual design of your framework and keep the mind very clear and crystal clear, I will say, while planning your framework. Okay. So that's why exception handling is very, very important. Now we'll talk more about throws keyword. Okay. Let me again shift back to my slide. Here we'll be talking more about the throws keyword. Okay. This is the same example which I've showcased you. Okay. So throws keyword, throws clause lists the types of exception that method might throw. Okay. So it's basically occur like in a method call, like there is a method, okay, type method name throws exception list. It can have multiple null pointer, comma, file not found exception, comma, arithmetic exception. You can have specified as commas. Okay, so there is a necessary for all the exception except for those of type error or runtime exceptions. Okay, so all the exceptions you can define over there. Okay. So, if I give you an example, okay, here we have an example. Live example is like we have a main block. We will start using it by thinking like a compiler. We'll don't start like this. Search for the main block first. Okay. Public static void main. Try throw one. Okay. Throw one is a method. Then we have a catch block, illegal access exception. So as per my compiler thinking, I came to the try block. I came to the throw one. Then I reached to this. Throw one is throwing throws illegal access exception, which means that if I'm inside the throw one, I throw new illegal access exception and with a message called demo. Okay. So now if I print like this, it will say caught demo. Okay. Which means that I am throwing any of the exception which I want. So suppose I have multiple catch blocks over here. Okay. Let us do it over here if possible. Okay. So suppose I don't want to uh, public static void main demo and I want to throws. Okay, throws null pointer exception over here, and I throw null pointer exception with call demo. Okay, now what it will print? See, demo throw exception handling. You see, previously it was printing the message which was as per the exception block, which is defined by the Java developers. But now you are customizing the message and you are throwing it using throws keyword. So technically, I have used the throws keyword over here, and you can have multiple such arithmetic exception as well. And suppose a dot null and then int c is equal to 2 divided by 0. Okay, and I have one more catch block over here, which is saying arithmetic exception e, and I will say throw new arithmetic exception, and again let's say calculation. Okay, so calculation over here, and I will say make it as DDD. I want to make it as DDD. Okay, so let us print now. Okay, sorry, I missed something. Yeah, print it. There's an arithmetic exception calculation. Okay, because I have not handled it. So if I even handle this one over here, let me handle this one as well. Arithmetic exception E, rows exception handle. C, calculation, rows exception handle. So this is the power of throws as well. you can have n number of exceptions in the body, okay, in that particular header, I will say over here during the declaration, and then you can throw n number of exceptions inside the body, which will be taken care by your parent block. Okay, so this is the power of throw and throws. Okay, if you are still confused and if you require any further assistance, do comment in the video. I will be there to help you out with exceptional handling. I'll be there to help you out with the framework architecture planning as well if you want that. Okay, so that's all we have from this particular video. I hope that you have enjoyed it. You have learned something very productive from it. Exceptional handling is very important concept, and in the next concepts will be coming up more about the collection classes. So that's a very important concept, guys. So don't miss it. We'll be planning the conception collection classes very well, and we'll be going in a very structured way. So see you in the next session. Thank you so much.